Rain hammered the glass outside La Torina, turning the city lights into trembling streaks of gold and crimson. Inside, candles flickered on marble tables as violins whispered through the air. At table 12, a waitress balanced a tray of crystal glasses, her movements steady, though her fingers were cold from exhaustion. Her name was Clara Evans, 26, broke, saving every dollar to care for her younger brother while finishing her nursing program. The silver name tag on her chest gleamed faintly, catching the glow from a chandelier that looked too glamorous for her world. She hated this job, yet she needed it more than oxygen. Tonight would change everything. Somewhere in the restaurant's hush sat a man whose presence bent the shape of the room, someone whispered about in the kind of low, warning tones people used when talking about fire. He sat in the corner booth where no one ever dared linger too long. Black suit, gold watch, dark eyes that seemed to know too much. They called him Leon Marchetti. People said he was a businessman. Others knew better. He was the kind of man who ruled the city's silence. Clara didn't know any of that yet. To her, he was just another demanding customer who tipped too little for the trouble he brought. But in the next few minutes, her mouth would write a sentence that would echo through that restaurant and through her entire life. Before we start, a quick hello to all the amazing listeners here. Tell me in the comments which country you're watching from and what time it is right now. And hey, if you love emotional love stories with a twist, subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. Now, back to La Torina. Steam curled from the kitchen doors as Clara pushed through, blinking against harsh fluorescent light. Table 12, medium rare steak, extra pepper, Marco the chef called. She caught the plate, smoothed her apron, and shouldered, her way back into the velvet-lined calm of the dining room. Every step was choreography. Smile, serve, disappear. That's how you survived in a place like this. But tonight, survival would demand something far braver. Leon Marchetti's jaw flexed as he turned a glass of bourbon between two fingers. The ice cracked softly. He didn't. He had come here to think, to decide whether loyalty demanded blood again. Everyone knew to leave him alone. Everyone, except Clara. "Your dinner, sir." Her voice was polite, careful. He didn't look at her. "It's cold," he said flatly. "It left the kitchen 90 seconds ago." The words escaped before good sense could grab them. Around them, conversation slowed, like the whole restaurant had exhaled in disbelief. The man looked up at last, and the weight of his glance felt like gravity made flesh. "What did you just say?" His voice was velvet-lined with threat. Clara's pulse thundered in her ears, but her lips didn't tremble. "I said it's not cold, sir. Maybe the problem isn't the food." Gasps rippled across the room. For a beat, even the violin fell silent. The silence in La Torina was thick enough to taste. Clara stood beside the corner booth, the tray in her shaking hand balanced by sheer pride. Somewhere across the room, someone whispered her name like a eulogy. The man in front of her, the one with the silk-dark stare, set his glass down with surgical precision, the ice clinking like a tiny blade. "You have spirit," he murmured, voice low enough that only she heard. "Most people lose it around me." Clara's throat was dry. "I'm just telling the truth." Leon Marchetti tilted his head slightly, curiosity eclipsing anger. Truth was a currency he didn't often receive, certainly not from waitresses. His men at a nearby table shifted uneasily, ready for orders that might ruin someone's evening, or life. But Leon only gestured to the seat opposite him. "Sit." Clara blinked. "I'm working." "Now you're in a job interview." His lips curved, the faintest edge of amusement. "Humor me." Every warning light inside her screamed no, but she placed the tray down and sat. The leather booth was smooth and cool beneath her fingertips. Up close, he didn't look older than 35, but time seemed to bend differently around someone like him. The faint scar near his temple caught the candlelight, and for no reason she could name, she wanted to know how he got it. Leon studied her face the way one might read a secret letter. "What's your name?" "Clara Evans." He repeated it softly, as if testing its weight. "Clara, you'd tell me if the chef served garbage, wouldn't you?" "Honestly? Probably." She met his gaze with steady eyes. That earned a quiet laugh, something rare and dangerous. "You're either extraordinarily brave or condescendingly foolish. Both are interesting." The maitre d' appeared like smoke, panic skating across his forehead. "Mr. Marchetti, sir, I'll have the dish replaced." Leon lifted a hand. The gesture was subtle but at final. "Leave it. I was mistaken." The man hesitated, then vanished faster than spilled wine. Clara exhaled, realizing how still she'd been holding herself. "Your steak's getting cold for real now," she said, trying for levity and missing by a mile. "Maybe I like it that way." His tone softened, unreadable. "Tell me something, Miss Evans. If you weren't here carrying plates for people who forget your name, what would you be doing?" She hesitated, caught off guard by the question's genuine curiosity. "Finishing school, taking care of my brother, trying to keep our apartment from collapsing out from under us." Leon's stare darkened, not with judgment, but recognition. "Responsibility that young makes you efficient. It also makes you angry. I can use people like that." "You can't hire me," she said instantly. "You'd be surprised what I can do." That faint smile again, half warning, half invitation. He tossed a folded 100 onto the table. "For the truth," he said simply. "Rare commodity." Clara rose, heart hammering. She didn't understand what game he was playing, but the feeling in her chest said it wasn't over. As she walked back toward the kitchen, she could feel the weight of his gaze like heat against her spine. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Inside, the air tasted like fate catching fire. By the time the dinner rush ended, the storm had swallowed the city whole. Rain lashed the windows, streetlights blurred into ribbons of silver, and the echo of Leon Marchetti's voice looped inside Clara's mind. "You'd be surprised what I can do." She tried to laugh it off while she wiped tables and counted tips, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Marco, the chef, leaned against the counter, lighting a cigarette he wasn't supposed to smoke indoors. "You're lucky he didn't shoot you," he muttered. "That man doesn't tolerate attitude." Clara rolled her eyes, though her pulse spiked. "He's a customer, not a dictator." Marco exhaled smoke toward the ceiling fan. "To you, maybe. To the rest of us, Leon Marchetti is a storm that walks in a suit." Clara didn't answer. She carried the last load of dishes into the kitchen, the clatter masking her confusion. Why had Leon made her sit? Why ask about her dreams like a recruiter? People like him didn't see waitresses. They looked through them. Yet something in his gaze had pierced straight through her armor and branded itself on her heartbeat. When she stepped into the alley behind the restaurant at closing time, the rain had lightened to a mist. She tugged her jacket tighter and started down the narrow street toward the subway. A sleek black car idled near the curb, its headlights painting silver halos in the puddles. The window rolled down slowly. "Miss Evans." Her breath caught. Leon's voice, quiet, controlled, utterly certain. She froze. "Are you following me?" "I prefer the term waiting." His tone suggested amusement, not apology. "Get in." Clara laughed nervously. "Not a chance." "You walk home alone every night. Dangerous habit in this city." "How do you even know that?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at her through the soft radiance of the dashboard light, rain sliding silently down the glass between the bed. "Because I make it my business to know the things that matter," he said finally. "And tonight, you matter." She wanted to tell him he was out of his mind, that she didn't need his protection or his car or his attention. But then, lightning scored the sky, illuminating a shadow at the end of the alley. A man she'd never seen before, watching her too closely. Her stomach twisted. Leon's door opened with a smooth hydraulic hiss. "Inside, Clara." His voice dropped lower, something primal threaded through the calm. She hesitated one heartbeat too long, then slid into the passenger seat. The door shut, sealing them inside a cocoon of leather, perfume, and power. The car accelerated, escaping the alley like a secret. For 3 breathless blocks they said nothing. Then Leon spoke, eyes on the road. "You really shouldn't talk to dangerous men the way you spoke to me tonight." Clara turned toward him. "Maybe someone needs to." He smiled without looking at her. "That's exactly what I was afraid of." Rain streaked across the windshield like threads of quicksilver as Leon's car hummed through the city. The streets gleamed, reflections twisting with every turn. Clara sat pressed against the door, every nerve demanding she understand why she'd agreed to get in. She knew this was madness. Yet a strange calm had settled beneath her fear, a pulse of inevitability beating with every sweep of the wipers. Leon drove one-handed, the other resting loosely on the steering wheel, perfect control without effort. "You live on 48th near the bridge," he said casually. Her eyes snapped toward him. "Are you tracking me?" "Knowing things is how I stay alive," he replied. "But tonight, it helps me get you home safely. That should count as good manners." "You have an unusual definition of manners." He smirked. "So I've been told." They reached her neighborhood, a line of aging brick buildings that looked smaller than she remembered. The car idled at the curb, the low purr of the engine the only sound between them. Leon turned toward her, shadows carving his expression into something unreadable. "You shouldn't have to live like you're one missed paycheck away from disaster." Her brow furrowed. "And what would you know about that?" "Everything." His confession was soft, almost lost to the rain. "Because I crawled out of the same kind of neighborhood before I learned how to buy a better one." The words unsettled her. There was sincerity there, buried under years of caution. He pulled a card from his pocket and placed it on the console between them. White, embossed, nothing written except a number and a small lion symbol. "If you ever need help, real help, call this number, day or night." "I don't want favors," she said. "It's not a favor, it's insurance." Clara shook her head, reaching for the handle, but paused. "Why me? You don't even know me." Leon leaned closer. The faint scent of cedar and smoke filled the small space. "Because you looked me in the eye when everyone else looked away. I need people who still remember how to do that." Her pulse stuttered. "People? You mean employees?" "Partnerships," he corrected smoothly. "The kind that change both our lives." His tone was half offer, half warning, as if he knew she'd hear both. She opened the door, cold air rushing in. "Good night, Mr. Marchetti." "Leon," he murmured. "Good night, Leon." She stepped out into the rain and shut the door. The car remained where it was, engine humming, his silhouette visible behind the glass until she disappeared inside the building. Upstairs, her brother was asleep, unaware that the city had shifted slightly on its axis. Clara set the mysterious card on the table and stared at it long after midnight. The little lion glimmered under the streetlight, promising a future she wasn't sure she wanted, and couldn't quite stop thinking about. 3 days passed before Clara saw the lion card again, 3 days of trying to pretend her world was the same. But the moment came when pretending wasn't an option. Her brother Ethan collapsed at home during breakfast, pale and barely breathing. The ambulance lights painted her apartment in blue panic, and the ER doctor's words cut like glass. "He needs medication his insurance won't cover." Clara's paycheck barely covered rent, let alone life-saving treatment. When every door slammed shut, she remembered the one that had opened itself 3 nights ago, a white card embossed with a lion. Her hand shook as she dialed the number. The line barely rang once. "Clara Evans?" Leon's voice, calm, certain. "What happened?" She was breathless. "My brother, Ethan. He's in the hospital. They need a deposit of $10,000 before treatment." "Where?" "St. Vincent's." "Don't move." The line clicked dead. 20 minutes later, the black car appeared in front of the sliding hospital doors like a shadow with perfect timing. Leon stepped out dressed in an obsidian coat that made the rest of the world look unimportant. He didn't ask many questions, just handed something to the billing nurse with quiet authority. 10 minutes later, the nurse was apologizing to Clara for the confusion. When he returned, she could barely meet his eyes. "You didn't have to do that." "I don't do what I have to," he said. "I do what's necessary." Ethan slept peacefully now, machines beeping in rhythm with his breath. Leon stood beside the bed, gaze softening just slightly. "Family," he said quietly. "That's the only reason that ever makes sense." Clara swallowed, her voice thick. "How do I repay you?" His gaze shifted toward her, dark and deliberate. "You don't repay kindness with money. You repay it with loyalty." "I'm not for sale, Leon." "Who mentioned a sale?" A faint smile ghosted his mouth. "Loya, Iltai isn't ownership. It's trust. I might need yours someday." She should have walked away right then. Instead, she whispered, "Someday?" His voice dropped lower. Tonight. Dinner. 7 p.m. I can't. My brother. I'll have a nurse from my foundation stay with him. She owes me. Every instinct tugged her backward, away from the gravity of this man who could change hospital policies with a look. But gratitude was an anchor, and she was already sinking. At 7, she found herself in another car, another world. Leon's private restaurant glowed in amber light, walls of glass revealing the storm-washed city below. Italian jazz flowed through hidden speakers, the scent of lemon and sage thick in the air. When he looked up from his table, candlelight carved gold into his eyes. You came. I didn't have a choice, she said, sitting. That's where you're wrong, Leon murmured. You always have a choice. You just don't realize how expensive they can become. Leon's private dining room hung high above the city, a shimmering cube of glass and shadows. Rain crept down the windows in silver threads, tracing the skyline below. A single candle burned between them, bending light across white china and black crystal. Clara sat rigid, aware of every heartbeat. The last time she'd shared a table with him, she'd defied him. Tonight, she was indebted to him, and that unsettled her more than fear ever could. The server placed plates she barely remembered ordering. Leon waited until they were alone before speaking. Ethan's stable. The new doctor's one of the best in the country. You know him? I financed his residency. His tone was matter-of-fact. So this is what you do, she said quietly, pushing the food around her plate. Trade in debts and favors. I prefer to think of it as investments in people. And you, Clara. His gaze locked on hers. Might be my most unpredictable investment yet. I didn't ask to be part of your portfolio. No, he said. But you walked into it when you called that number. The words tightened the space between them. She should thank him, walk away, start fresh somewhere else. But the way he said her name made retreat impossible. Across the room, the elevator doors opened without warning. 2 men stepped out, soaked from the storm, rough suits, colder eyes. Leon's expression shuddered instantly from warmth to steel. You're early, he said without rising. One of the men shrugged. Had to check if rumors were true. The great Leon Marchetti playing savior to a waitress. His voice carried the sneer of someone testing limits. Clara stiffened. Leon's tone dropped to a dangerous calm. Careful, Rafe. Careful? The man laughed. That's what you used to say right before everything caught fire. His gaze shifted to Clara. You don't belong here, sweetheart. People who dine with the devil rarely walk out alive. Before she could respond, Leon was on his feet, chair sliding back without noise. His control was terrifying. He stood between her and them, an unspoken line drawn in marble. You've had your moment, he said quietly. Rafe smirked. Your father would have handled interruptions differently. And that's why my father's dead, Leon said, flat, deadly true. Silence flooded the room. The other man tugged Rafe's sleeve, murmured something urgent, and they both disappeared into the elevator, like ghosts returning to their graves. When the doors sealed again, Leon turned back to her. The mask slipped just long enough for her to see what lay beneath. Pain, history, and rage wrapped tight. Your family? She asked softly. Corrections, he said with a thin smile. There's always someone testing how far I'll bend before I break. And I just became another test? Maybe, Leon admitted. Or maybe you're the reason I stopped breaking things that matter. He poured a glass of red wine, the candle's reflection trembling across its surface. Welcome to my world, Clara. This is what loyalty costs, and what defiance wakes up. Lightning cracked beyond the glass, illuminating Leon's profile like a statue carved from fire. Clara's pulse raced as she tried to piece together what she'd just witnessed. Those men had spoken his father's name like an insult. Whatever business empire Leon commanded wasn't carved by meetings or contracts. It was built in shadows. Now that darkness had found her. You should stay somewhere safe tonight, Leon said, gaze fixed on the rain-blurred skyline. I'm not running into hiding because you have enemies, she snapped. That's your world, not mine. But it became yours the moment you called me. His voice was quiet, but edged with something fateful. Then let me uncall you, she shot back, standing. You don't get to rewrite my life because you paid a hospital bill. He caught her wrist, not harshly, but firmly enough that her protest froze. If you walk out, Clara, they'll follow you. Those men won't see a waitress. They'll see leverage. Then tell me the truth, she demanded. What kind of man are you that people risk lightning to provoke you? Leon's jaw flexed, then he released her hand. The kind who built peace out of violence and doesn't know how to keep them separate anymore. Before she could answer, the elevator chimed. The lights flickered. His guards burst through, rain streaming down their shoulders. Sir, they hit the garage, Rafe's men armed. Get her out, Leon ordered. No, Clara blurted, heart slamming. I won't hide while people get hurt because of me. Leon turned, disbelief slicing through his panic. Because of me, not you. A gunshot cracked from the hallway, glass shattering. One of Leon's men staggered into the room, bleeding. Instinct took Clara's body before fear could paralyze it. She tore her scarf free, pressing it against the man's wound, voice sharp from training. Stay with me! Leon stared, the ferocity in her toned sea, udding through the chaos. Then another explosion echoed from below. He crouched beside her, covering them both with his arm as shards rained down. When the noise subsided, Clara's hands were slick with blood, her breath ragged. The wounded man groaned, alive because she refused to freeze. Leon rose, coat torn, eyes blazing. You saved him. She met his gaze, unflinching. You think only men know how to protect what they care about? A strange stillness fell between them. For the first time, Leon smiled. Not the gentle mask he wore in public, but something genuine, almost shattered. I think I never understood what strength looked like until now. Sirens screamed in the distance. He took her hand, gripping it hard. We're leaving. You and your brother both. My safe house. No arguments. And if I say no? His lips curved with that dark humor that somehow made her heart ache. Then I'll have to find a way to make yes feel like your idea. They fled into the storm together, headlights carving through sheets of rain while the city howled behind them. Dawn broke like a wound healing, slow, golden, reluctant. The storm had passed, but the air still trembled from the violence that came before it. Leon's car wound along a coastal road just outside the city, ending at a villa half hidden behind tall stone walls. Guards were posted discreetly near the gate, but inside it smelled only of salt air and coffee. Clara followed him into a living room lined with glass overlooking the sea. Her clothes were damp, her nerves frayed, yet her voice stayed steady. You call this a safe house? Leon unbuttoned his ruined coat, revealing a streak of dried blood across his sleeve. Safer than the last place. Rafe's men won't touch this property. But they'll try again. Probably. His blunt honesty left no space for comfort, only truth. Clara crossed her arms. I can't keep living running from ghosts I don't understand. Then stop running, he said quietly. Stay. Her laugh was short, bitter. You mean, what? Hide here while you handle business with bullets? He stepped closer, the morning light turning his eyes almost bronze. No, I mean stay because you want to, not because you owe me. I'm tired of being the man everyone fears, Clara. You looked at me once and saw a human being instead of a threat. Don't let the rest of the world teach you to unsee that. The confession hung between them, fragile as glass. For a long moment, neither moved. Waves broke below the cliffs with rhythmic violence, the same tempo as the heartbeat she felt thrumming in her wrist. Finally, she whispered, What happens to people who care about you? They usually leave or get hurt, he admitted. Maybe it's time you change that pattern, she said. Leon studied her, rain still glossed on his hair, his expression unguarded for once. You make it sound possible. It is. She stepped closer, fingers brushing the fabric of his torn sleeve, tracing that, a line where danger softened into skin. You proved it last night by sparing Rafe's men when you could have destroyed them. You walked away instead. That was you, he said, voice raw. You made me walk away. The silence that followed was warm instead of cold. They stood there until the sea's restless rhythm became the only sound. Then Leon's hand found hers, careful, deliberate, as if he'd finally learned the difference between possession and connection. Outside, The first sunlight pierced the lingering rain clouds, scattering gold across the glass. For once, neither of them looked away from the light. 2 days passed before either of them mentioned the night of the attack again. In the villa perched above the restless ocean, time slowed down, rewiring itself from panic to uneasy peace. Clara spent mornings in the kitchen with the housekeeper, learning the names of herbs in Italian and pretending she wasn't listening for news from the city. Leon worked behind closed doors, handling calls she wasn't supposed to hear, discussions of ceasefires, negotiations, debts being paid without blood. The world he belonged to was still sharp, but its edges were softening because he was trying to make them. On the third evening, she stood on the balcony watching waves slam into the rocks. Behind her, Leon poured 2 glasses of wine, the sound almost tender. "You've been quiet tonight." "Trying to remember what calm feels like," she said. He joined her, sleeves rolled, the ocean wind cutting through his dark hair. "It feels fragile, doesn't it? Like something that breaks the moment you admit it exists." She turned toward him, studying the man behind the myth. "It doesn't have to." Leon gave a small smile. "Every person who ever said that to me ended up regretting it. Then they didn't mean it." He looked genuinely curious. "And you do?" "Yes." Her voice didn't tremble. "Because power shouldn't come from fear, Leon. It should come from respect. You could build something good if you wanted to." He leaned on the railing beside her. "You think a man like me could change?" "I think a man like you already started." Wind carried the scent of salt and citrus between them. For a long time there was only silence, one that felt like understanding rather than absence. Finally Leon spoke again, quieter. "When you argued with me that night in the restaurant, do you know what froze me?" "What?" "You didn't see a monster. You saw a man behaving badly. You were yelling at people who couldn't fight back." He nodded, eyes dark. "And you made me realize I was what I hated most. Someone my father would have respected." Clara reached for his hand. "Then don't be him. Be the man who saved my brother." He exhaled, the smallest laugh in his throat. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't, but it's worth trying." She squeezed his hand once, firm. The sunset fractured across the sea, light spilling in broken gold. In that moment, Leon believed her. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a sentence. It felt like a choice. A week later, the lion card that had once changed everything lay tucked inside Clara's worn notebook, no longer a symbol of fear, but of possibility. The villa had become quiet. No armored cars outside, no midnight phone calls, just the rhythm of waves and the hum of a coffee maker that burned slightly each morning because Leon refused to learn patience. Life, fragile and genuine, had begun to return. They sat on the terrace overlooking the water, dawn painting soft coral on the horizon. Clara flipped through her nursing textbooks, preparing to sit for her final licensing exam, something she thought she'd never finish. Leon read the newspaper, ignoring the business section where his own name appeared next to words like legitimate acquisition and philanthropy. "You're really doing it," she said finally. He glanced up. "Doing what?" "Building that life from respect instead of fear." A faint smile tugged his mouth. "It's slower." "Everything honest is," she replied, closing the book. "But slower isn't weaker." He reached across the table, brushing her fingers, the morning light catching on the scar near his temple. "You know, I used to count what I owned by numbers in a bank. Now I count it by heartbeats in this house." "Careful, that almost sounds romantic." "It is," he admitted, "because for a long time I thought redemption came from being forgiven. Turns out it comes from wanting to deserve forgiveness." Clara stood and crossed to the railing. The wind lifted her hair, carrying the scent of coffee and sea salt. "You've earned more than forgiveness, Leon. You've earned peace." Behind her, he rose, footsteps quiet on the stone. "Peace." He tasted the word like it was foreign. "You don't own peace. You rent it. One good decision at a time." She turned, smiling softly. Then let's just keep paying the rent. He laughed, a sound utterly free of tension, and held her close. The sun breached the horizon then, flooding them both in gold, every shadow chased back into yesterday. For the first time since their violent beginning, the world felt simple, two people who refused to give up on each other, even when darkness demanded it. Later, as the camera of memory panned out over the sea, a voiceover would whisper what both of them were thinking, that strength is not in power or in control, but in compassion strong enough to change what power means. Every storm ends somewhere, and sometimes its final echo is love. Thank you for listening to this story. Please like, subscribe, and share for more love stories that you have never heard before.